everyone. Good morning. Thank you once again for coming, even if you're not part of the people that I thanked earlier for being early. We thank you still. We are starting now. So sorry for the delay. It was due to matters out of our control. So my name is Alexandra, and I work with TIERS, the Initiative for Equal Rights. We are responsible for this event in collaboration with the National Human Rights Commission. And what is this event, you might ask? We are here for the 11th Annual Human Rights, Sexuality and the Law Symposium. And we want to explore how to create a responsive democracy, one that recognizes diversity, the dignity of human persons, one that is inclusive, and one that works for everyone, right? So that's what we're here to discuss today. I thank you once more for coming, and I hope that you can gain some of the key insights that we have outlined and that our panelists and speakers will be sharing for you today. So I want to give a little overview about TIERS and what we do. So TIERS is a non-profit organization that responds to the needs of the most marginalized groups. We initially started through HIV prevention and treatment, or management rather. And then we have now expanded over the course of our 20 years of existence into human rights programming, feminist organizing, and other such inclusive human rights focused interventions, right? And I think some of the key thematic areas that we use to advance the rights of all human beings is through, improving healthcare access for marginalized people, narrative change, human rights advocacy and legal reform, research and documentation. Some things that you'll be seeing today, including the launch of the reports that we're here for, because in addition to being a meeting place for conversations with key stakeholders, government personnel, civic society, activists, individuals, in addition to being that kind of space for conversations around human rights, this is also a space to launch the reports that details the violence, the very real violence that people who have different sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics face on a daily basis in this country. It is persistent, It is harrowing, it is disturbing, and it is something that we all need to come together to put an end to, or to drastically reduce. So yeah, that's where the symposium, the idea for the symposium came from, and that is what we're doing here today. The report is just one of the many research documentation, what's the word, research projects that we have put out and continue to put out over the years. In terms of narrative change, we have a lot of stuff on YouTube that details the lived realities of these people that I'm describing, who have diverse sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics. This being, I just said, sexual orientation, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics, we call it SOGIESC, right? The abbreviation is SOGIESC. So I'm going to be using SOGIESC and the full thing interchangeably. So I just wanted to mention that real quick. So yes, that's a little bit about TIARS. I believe that everyone here is already familiar with the National Human Rights Commission. That is the national body responsible for upholding the human rights of all Nigerians, regardless of your identity. So we are very honored to be here today partnering with NHRC. This is our second edition in partnership with NHRC, but this is the 11th edition of this symposium. So yes, we are very proud and we're very happy to have you join us today, and really look forward to all the conversations that will happen on the stage today. Thank you once more for your attention, your presence, and your contribution. Yeah? All right, thanks guys. So we are going to move on to the next thing. Let me check in with our team. Are we ready to go? No, okay. What? Okay, we're good. All right. So we just watched a little bit of one of the narrative change efforts that we put out.
they were synthesizing their objectives with the colonialists. And you know, for the colonialists, their own big thing was commerce, and they were pursuing that. But then, by the time they began to work together, I mean, then you find also Nigerians asking for more education, more funding for the education of their children. Once the missionaries came, and Nigerians started seeing, especially in the Lagos area, started seeing, I mean, this looks beautiful. We want our children educated. They started asking for more. Now, as they asked for more, as colonialism was taking foot, because more or less they were just trading posts all over, and I think there was a Niger company or something that was, yes. So the colonialism was like, yeah, just some Lagos colony, and then they spread, but then we had, I think the wars, the Yoruba, Parako, Kiriji wars, all of the wars, and Yorubas started fighting one another, and then there was the jihad. Beautiful. We want our children educated. They started asking for more. Yorubas got together, fought, but apparently the British traders felt like these guys are getting in the way, I mean, of trade. Okay, so we will offer you protection, and that was how colonialism got hold. So once this happened, the objectives of the missionaries, who were now mainly white, and the colonialists, then started coalescing. Their own values and philosophy would begin to be reflected where their money is. But I also know where their money is. But I also know that the jihad of Usman Dan Fodio supposedly took women off, the public sphere. But I've also read in the literature, again, I think it was Fafunwa, between Fafunwa and Pereira, Shaman, who were saying Usman Dan Fodio himself actually kept talking about the education of women. At some point, he was even saying something like, if you are not educating your women, you are just being hypocrites. He said that openly. And that his own daughters were educated. One was a poet. He intentionally got women to attend his lectures, kind of. They were present there, So it's like, when you have a philosophy, a set of principles that you espouse, you are pretty clear. Well, the ones who will be your followers will then take another path, inflecting with politics and the rest of it, and their own ideologies or whatever. And apparently, it was the ones who came after Usman Dan Fodio who then, got to reduce women's roles, especially in the public. That's for that. Now let's come to the South. If you have colonialists who are coming from Britain, like I said, and who have these particular views of women as inferior to men, and if you are going to spend money on education, you are going to have to just prioritize the one that is superior. That one they wanted, they wouldn't let him be. They criticized his indirect rule, changes he was making to the courts, and he was accusing them of westernization and trying to live. You want to be like us. He was accusing them of westernization and trying to live. You want to be like us. Who are you? And he kept describing us like
African people had very strong belief systems.
Who are you? And he kept describing us like
African people had very strong belief system before colonialism. Such belief system manifested in their architecture, in their culture, in their geography, in their horticulture, in their socio-political structures. They defined who they were, whom I'm very familiar. And in doing that, I'm not breaking the rule. If you are versed in European and Western philosophy, everything started in that very tiny city called Athens in Greece. And so you produce a Plato, you produce an Aristotle, and then the thoughts of these people are called European thoughts. Okay? So I also have the intellectual right to say that whatever is Yoruba is African thoughts. After all, Yoruba is African. Igbo is also other parts of Africa will be qualified to do so, but I'm taking it from the Yoruba point of view. So if you look at it from the Yoruba point of view, you see that at no time did the Yoruba people underplay any gender in the society. This is clearly stated in their indigenous knowledge system, especially the Ifa system. This is clearly stated in their proverbs. This is clearly stated in their socio-political structures and institutions. Let me start from the third one. In any palace that you ever get to in Yoruba land, till today, no king will take decision without an Iyalode and perhaps an Iyaloja. Because Iyalode is a woman and the opinion of woman counts strongly within the Yoruba political worldview. That tells you that structurally, the Yoruba did not suppress the power of women. That's number one. Two, you also know that in Yoruba career system, women dominated the market. Men will go into the forest to farm, to create wealth and bring to the market for their women to sell. 99% of palaces in Yoruba land are created very close to the market. That is done because the king wanted to hear the temperament of the polity through the voices of the women. Okay? That's about the structure. In terms of the socio-political thoughts, especially when it comes to the Ifa indigenous knowledge system, women are even considered superior. And I'm picking that word deliberately. Women are considered superior to men. If you go to the spiritual aspect, at the end of every man learning Ifa is an indoctrination system which is called Iwogodu. Without a woman leading, nobody will initiate that ritual. And of course, if you go to Igbo land, there are some women who have become old after menstrual performance, post 50, post 60. They turn them to men automatically. And whenever a man is not around, they take the role of women. We can have uncountable examples.
Studies carried out by Oyerunke Oyewumi, 1997, George Olushola Ajibade in 2013, and Ifi Amaduime in 2015 on sexual diversities in Africa reveal that before colonialism in Nigeria, the Igbo and Yoruba tribes lived without restrictive gender norms. The pre-colonial women from Igbo and Yoruba regions wielded socio-economic and political powers that became less visible with colonization.
Africans, when it comes to their knowledge system, their social structures, do not underrate a woman. Even within the family setting, especially again in the Yoruba circle, there's what you call Olobinle. Olobinle. You have a family. The first wife to be married into that family has almost the equal authority of the head of that family, who probably is a male. If the male takes a decision and the yale pata says no, that man will not go ahead. Again, why? Because he knows the power and importance of women, as it were. So, in terms of structure, in terms of philosophy, in terms of knowledge, never underplay the role of women. Now, you may want to ask, how come today our society appears to, watch that phrase, appears to look like a patriarchal society. You want an answer to that? We got it from the pink people. The pink people in Europe. The pink people in America. The pink people who came to impose a religion on you, and in that religion, God is smart. Jesus is smart. All prophets of God are men. We never found that in Africa. In Africa, you had male deities, e.g. Shango, Olukosho, Arekujaye, Oshefikifekilebija, e.g. Ogun Lakaye, Osimole, Oluminlefejewe, Olasunlefimokimobura, e.g. Oya Oriri, e.g. Osun Oriyeye. It was balanced. But when the pink people came to Africa and introduced Christianity and elevated God to one person with a male figure who was created in this and all this, we began to follow their concept. And of course, everybody now began to tend towards man being superior. Declaratively in Africa, men were never superior to women. There were rules in the society that both men and women had.
Colonialism also overturned the mystical resonance of powerful female deities such as Goddess Idemili, Yemoja, Oshun, as well as the public relevance of African women. This faulty premise poses the question: if diverse sexual orientation and gender identities did not exist in Africa, why did the colonists find the need to introduce draconian laws regarding this stance in Africa?
The gender bias thing, it's not just starting today. It started way back, even among the Orishas. There's this Voodoo that talked about how the Orishas came and the Oromolas, and everything they were doing.
How are we feeling? Did we enjoy that little documentary talking about like pre-colonial approaches to gender and sexuality? And show that it's not worth buying time or anything. Give us a quality of expression. Okay, we're ready now. So sorry, folks. Please, let's rise for the national anthem, the first stanza of the new anthem. this very interesting anthem, I would love to introduce our first speaker for the day. I'm very excited to welcome the Executive Secretary of the NHRC. I will just quickly read his bio while he's walking up to the stage to give us his speech. Mr. Tony Ojukwu is the Executive Secretary and CEO of the NHRC of Nigeria and a Senior Advocate of Nigeria, a rank he attained in December 2021. A distinguished legal practitioner, he has built a career dedicated to justice, human rights, and public service. His leadership at the Commission reflects his commitment to strengthening institutional accountability and advancing the protection of human rights nationwide. Please put your hands together for the ES, everyone.
Thank you very much for that kind introduction. I'll pay due respects to my brother, the Executive Director of TS, and I recognize all civil society groups. I can see Human Rights Watch here and other people from the National Human Rights Commission and other CSOs that are here. So it is indeed a great honor and with deep sense of responsibility that I welcome you to the 11th edition of Human Rights, Sexuality and Law Symposium. I extend warm appreciation to the Initiative for Equal Rights, TS, for their continued partnership with the National Human Rights Commission in convening this important annual dialogue. Today, we all gathered for this critical moment. The theme of this year's symposium is Responsive Democracy, Protecting Human Dignity through Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And the theme challenges us to reflect not only on the structures of our democracy, but a very fundamental aspect of it, which is the capacity to recognize, respect, and protect the dignity of every person. A truly responsive democracy is not measured only by elections or institutions, but by how it treats its most vulnerable and diverse population. It is judged by whether justice is accessible to all, whether protection is accorded to all, whether voices from the margins are heard, and whether difference is treated not as a threat, but as a strength. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria affirms the inherent dignity and worth of every human person, every human being, and democracy. As the National Human Rights Commission, the Commission remains firmly committed to promoting, protecting, and enforcing the rights of every person in Nigeria. Our mandate compels us to serve every Nigerian, regardless of sexual, gender, ethnic, social, or cultural identity, as well as belief, social status, or circumstances. This symposium, held annually to mark International Human Rights Day, has become a very important platform for having hard conversations, honest reflection, as well as the contribution to the national dialogue and policy reform. The NHRC is honored to host you in Nigeria's Human Rights House, a place of refuge, a palace of justice for all Nigerians. The NHRC has mobilized our mandate for the protection of the rights of sexual minorities. We are represented and appealed successfully. We have represented and appealed successfully the convention of the Ningi III in Bauchi. Together with civil society organizations, we have also challenged the constitutionality of Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act. Recently, we have responded to indiscriminate arrests and detention of persons perceived to be homosexuals in Anambra, in Delta, in Gombe, in Kogi, and Edo states. Following from this, the National Human Rights Commission has drafted and approved a standard minimum guideline on the arrest, detention, and prosecution of key and vulnerable populations in Nigeria. We are currently finalizing the launch of an emergency response framework which will enable a rapid response system to the violation of the rights of persons in the key population communities. Just a few days ago, we held our 4th CSO Forum on Human Rights, commemorating our 30th anniversary. The forum included 10 technical and thematic workshops, including the theme, Their Rights Matter. Are we losing the battle to protect the LGBTQI populations in Nigeria? We are grateful to the co-hosts to this workshop, including TEARS. In the new year and beyond, the NHRC will be strengthening its protective mandate to secure the rights of key populations in the country. We will be launching state-level capacity building for law enforcement, community-based organizations, and key population society actors on the protection of key population in the first half of 2026. Let me be clear. Conversations around sexuality, identity, and inclusion are often complex and sensitive, yet they are essential. We cannot claim to uphold human dignity while ignoring the lived realities of communities who experience stigma, violence, exclusion, and injustice. A responsive democracy must be brave enough to confront uncomfortable truths and compassionate enough to protect everyone. The NHRC as an independent body remains resolute in its role as a bridge between the state and the people, facilitating dialogue, promoting accountability, and strengthening systems of protection. We recognize that progress is not achieved through silence, denial, or exclusion, but through openness, collaboration, and respect for the rule of law. As we gather here to deliberate today, to engage constructive protected, equity must be pursued, our commitment to work with all stakeholders
this important conversation. When it become over here, bringing space for reflection, truth-telling, and collective action. My gratitude, first of all, goes to the National Human Rights Commission, NHRC, for generously hosting us here, giving us headquarters once more. Just as this year's theme, as you must have seen and heard, responsive democracy, protecting human dignity through diversity, equity, and inclusion, could not be more timely. As a nation begins to look forward to the upcoming elections, we are confronted with the urgent question: what does democracy truly mean if it does not protect everyone? Nigeria today is navigating a period of profound insecurity, economic strain, and declined trust in public institutions. From the tragic violence in different states to the relentless rise in kidnappings, hunger, and structural inequalities, citizens across the country are calling, nay, pleading for justice, for accountability, and for a governance that listens. Those of us who live at the margins, key population, persons living with HIV, persons with disabilities, women, young people, ethnic, sexual, religious minorities, we continue to bear the heaviest cost of criminalization, of stigma, and of neglect. Laws like the SSMPA, along with the pervasive moral panic and sociocultural queerphobia, legitimize violence, it fuels blackmail, and deny our fellow citizens safety and belonging. These realities remind us that the erosion of rights is not merely a social issue, it's a democratic issue. A democracy that excludes, that selectively protects, or that turns its back on the vulnerable, it's not a democracy that is functioning as it should. And so today we gather not only to discuss challenges, but to reimagine the possibilities of a Nigeria where dignity is non-negotiable and inclusion is fundamental and not optional. At its core, this symposium is a call to action, a call to move beyond symbolic gestures towards a governance that is truly responsive, rooted in empathy, in historical awareness, and in a commitment to protect the dignity of every Nigerian. It challenges us to imagine and then build a democracy where diversity is not feared nor misunderstood, where equality is not contested, and where inclusion is not a privilege but a promise kept. I want to extend my heartfelt appreciation to our keynote speaker, Arit Opo. Thank you so much for being here. Your voice continues to reshape narratives and amplify truth in powerful ways. Thank you for lending your voice and your wisdom to this set of conversations. So we're happy for you being here. Thank you. To our distinguished panelists, we want to appreciate you for your courage, your advocacy, and the depth of expertise you bring to these conversations. Your interventions today will help us to chart new paths towards equity and justice. And to every organization represented here, from diplomatic missions, government partners, civil society colleagues, religious leaders, educators, media professionals, and members of diverse human rights movements, we thank you for choosing to stand with us. We appreciate you, and we look towards the work ahead, knowing that it requires all of us in solidarity and in truth. I must also recognize the exceptional team at Tears. As you must have heard, this is our 11th time doing this, and it's no small feat. Your commitment to truth, your resilience in the face of immense pressure, and your unwavering belief in a more just Nigeria and beyond are the reasons why we convene in spaces like this. Thank you for your brilliance and for your dedication. As we begin today's conversations, let us remember the measure of a nation is not in how it treats the powerful, but how it safeguards those most at risk. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for standing with us and choosing to imagine a Nigeria where every person, regardless of who they are, and no matter what they believe in or they stand for, can live, love, and thrive in dignity. I wish all of us meaningful conversations and a very transformative convening. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much. Please, another round of applause for the Executive Director of Tears. I am very happy. I feel inspired knowing that everyone who has spoken today has mentioned collective responsibility and how a responsive democracy is one that is inclusive and does not leave anyone behind. I'm really glad that we are setting the stage for the conversation in this way. So without further ado, please, I would love to introduce our keynote speaker. They've already been mentioned by Afolabi, a longtime friend and partner of the house. So I'm going to do the same. I'm going to use the same format. I will read their bio, and then they will come up and speak. So Arit is a TV host, speaker, filmmaker, and speaking coach. They are the immediate past hosts of CNN African Voices, where they told the stories of Africa's change makers. They also hosted 3 seasons of Untold Facts, a show sharing the stories and experiences of LGBT people in Nigeria. You should go look it up, by the way. Arit makes documentaries that discuss social realities. Examples include Where Women Marry Wives, a look at traditional women-women marriages in Nigeria, and Jesse, a story on one of Nigeria's most tragic pipeline explosions. As a voice talent, Arit has worked on documentaries such as Marked, a documentary on traditional scarification, and audiobooks Vagabonds, and Necessary Fiction, both searing and vital books on queer life from a diversity of perspectives written by author Elohosa Osunde. Arit moderates high-level conversations around the world. Some examples include panels at the Intra-Africa Trade Fair, an annual event organized by the Africa Export-Import Bank to boost trade relationships across the African continent and beyond, conversations for the Black Feminist Fund to support philanthropic work in the Global South, and most recently, Soundboard by TTA. Arit explores topics at the intersections of culture, gender, and sexuality, and is committed to telling nuanced and human stories. Please welcome Arit Opo, everyone. Please, clap, clap, let's clap. Yeah, thank you, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It's a pleasure to see you all today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your patience and your presence. Thank you also most sincerely to the ED of Tears, Afolabi, who has continued to extend a hand of partnership to me through Tears. Thank you to Alexandra, whose presence and support and liaising facilitated my presence here today. And to all the members of Tears who work so tirelessly, thank you for organizing this event. I also thank the NAP today. I'm very pleased to deliver this keynote on responsive democracy, protecting human dignity through diversity, equity, and inclusion. It comes at a very difficult and timely moment as Nigeria is once again faced with a rising and multi-sided insecurity. One of the things I have appreciated from the welcome remarks so far is how aligned in thought and in perspective we all are. Daily on social media, at any given point in time, you might read cries for help from Nigerians whose loved ones have been kidnapped, asking for help from the police, the community, anyone listening to help to return their people to safety. I hear of the consistent attacks by bandits or terrorists in rural and indigenous communities around Nigeria. Christians attacked in church, farmers killed in their farms, entire villages sacked to the ground with hundreds dead and even more homeless and displaced. This is a regular reality. Alongside that, I encounter stories of women crowdfunding for help to escape abusive situations. Right beside that, yet another LGBTQ person recounting an experience about being ketoed. All these alongside daily online harassment of feminists through a swell of verbal abuse, death threats, and doxing. The use of AI to undress women or depict them in sexually explicit situations. It is an unending flood. And this is my experience as an everyday citizen who still somewhat experiences the world from an observatory place. For those of you who work in the field, I know that it must be so much more overwhelming. So this is something that continues to become clear to me when I think about Nigeria. That the strength of any democracy, and Afolabi, you said this as well, the strength of any democracy lies in the quality of living of its most vulnerable. That means children. That can mean women, religious and ethnic minorities, people with disabilities, sexual minorities, and gender diverse people. It means the elderly and the poor. On that score, how do we grade our democracy as a nation? In the course of the events today, you will hear details from the Human Rights Violations Report for 2025. As you listen to these statistics, I ask that we hold in our minds that they refer to human beings, citizens of the same country you belong to, with the same rights as any other person in this room or beyond these walls. The gaps have always been and will always be the people in the shadows, the people who are not met by the overarching actions of the collective or of the nation. So what do we say about a country where citizens can be arrested at will and thrown into cells without legal recourse? A country where the inability to travel by air might cost millions of naira that were already impossible to begin with. How can our laws be used to fairly assess and attend to cases of digital violence, rather than as a tool for those with more power who are unhappy with how they are addressed online? As things stand, our laws are very much tools used against the people, rather than as a support to the people. The Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act, the Violence Against Persons Prohibition Act and the Child Rights Act remain undomesticated across many parts of the country. The Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, by its existence, empowers and enables violence against LGBT people. The Gender Equality Act has been repeatedly shut down, and even now lawmakers are debating whether to further restrict access to safe termination of pregnancy, an act that will have direct negative effects on people across Nigeria. One of the things I was asked to do when preparing this keynote was to imagine a democracy that works for all, a democracy that honors the reality of every human being, a democracy that celebrates diversity, equity, and inclusion. When I reflected on this, I knew that beyond giving an address, I wanted this to be a conversation, a moment to expand the thoughts. I would like this to be a collective exercise, because you all in this room are here because in some respects, this is part of your work. This is part of yours to begin to ask ourselves those questions, or that question. To me, a responsive democracy is one where human lives and human rights are honored and protected. It means a person can go to the police if they experience an assault and be responded to by an empathetic and professional officer. It means that a person experiencing gender-based violence or any sort of harm can find resources and support with relative ease. It means a country where children's rights are enshrined and where children can go to school without fearing for their lives and risking their freedom. A responsive democracy takes the rights of its citizens as sacrosanct and acts decisively if these rights are eroded. It means a country where laws are discussed with the involvement of and attention to the stakeholders and the people who will be most affected. It means education is prioritized, healthcare is inclusive and accessible to all, and where people with disabilities can use public facilities because their independence and mobility have been taken seriously. It means that people can work to a fair wage with social structures that protect them in the case of unforeseen life circumstances. It means that the rule of law is not just for the poor and those without resources, but also for the rich and powerful. And that the best of our nation continue to find access and the means to thrive. Now, I could continue for a while, but I think you get my drift. So how do we achieve this? There are some things we know. We know that corruption needs to be attended to. We know that repressive laws must be repealed and amended. We know that our governance structures must become more progressive and less punitive. Lawmaking must become more attuned to the citizens. As a matter of general urgency, Nigeria's cross-national security situation must be thought of as a state of emergency and handled as such until internal and external security threats are neutralized. While this is ongoing, it is imperative to protect and safeguard the internally displaced people in camps who are now dependent on the state for their daily existence. It is imperative to protect the rights of citizens of insecure areas, including girls, Christians, and indigenous communities who are often punished for protecting themselves. As a matter of urgency, acts such as the Violence Against Persons Prohibitions Act and the Child's Rights Act should be domesticated. The Discrimination Against Persons with Disabilities Act should be enforced. As a matter of seriousness, create a consensus around the Gender and Equal Opportunities Bill and pass it. And review and repeal acts such as the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibitions Act that are inconsistent with the Constitution and the rights of Nigerian people. In summary, institutionalize, establish, and execute the fundamental human rights of every Nigerian. In addition to these, a few more practical things. To government agencies represented here, carry out your internal reviews, especially if you're an agency or organization whose work caters to the full spectrum of individuals across this country. You can only work from the limits of your knowledge and training. How do you interact with people who are different from you? What is your organizational charter in relation to the dignity of all people? If you do not believe in the fundamental rights of the people you serve, how can you effectively serve them? So, review and update your structures, confront your biases, take stock of your errors, train and retrain your team members until everyone understands the basis of inclusiveness, equity, and dignity for all. Create specialized desks for the sensitive handling of assault cases, cases of violence and abuse seriously, and consider it vital to protect women and girls from online abuse, doxing, the harmful use of AI, and other associated crimes. Take accountability for the wrongs of the members of your teams. It has to become completely unacceptable, not anecdotal, to harass members of the society because of how they look or how they are perceived. So take public complaints seriously and use them as an opportunity to expand your operational framework rather than an attack on your abilities. Honor the rights of every citizen to legal recourse and act with transparency and with an awareness that your work must be above reproach. Look honestly at the data and what it means. And while we're at it, make it safer and easier for people to report violations. Create transparent reporting mechanisms that work and be proactive in your response. To everyone here whose work interacts with the public, be mindful and inclusive in your language. How you tell a story, how you describe the work you do, who it is open to, all of these things matter. In these days when it is popular to be a troll and to speak dismissively even to the communities and the people that you are serving, communicating clearly and respectfully can make a huge difference in how people think of and respond to your efforts. Interact honestly with the organizations and people who are most affected. Honor the humanity and dignity of everyone you encounter. Within the frameworks of your organizational charters are values that lay out the scope of your service. Honor the spirit and not just the words. This is one reason why it was so good to hear that the Human Rights Commission is being proactive in creating things like an emergency response framework, minimum guidelines, capacity building, because it shows that it is possible for an agency to put its focus primarily on people. Utilize your networks and your influence effectively. That includes partner organizations, government agencies where you have an open door, lawmaking spaces where you are able to speak honestly, where you are able to speak, where you can refuse, agitate, engage, persist, do so. Finally, Imagining the future must be a collective and ongoing work. It means thinking, what would be the best possible scenario here? One that protects the most vulnerable and honors the dignity of all. The answers may surprise you. Some answers may be more complicated than you imagine, but that is an honest and true place to start. Start from somewhere, commit to continuing and growing, accept the possibility that you may sometimes be wrong, listen and learn from the people you serve, and audit yourselves consistently. The Nigerian democracy story has traditionally been built on sacrifice, even till death. It is built on a narrative that citizens must all give up something for greatness to happen. If that was truly the case, we would, at this very moment, be a global superpower. These days, I sit in the opinion that there are better ways of building a collective reality. I believe that part of the key to improving our democracy is to resist or refuse the notion that many people must suffer, must give up all they can, even their lives, for a better nation. A progressive democracy consists of building the right policies and structures to create an environment that covers and protects all its citizens, and underlying these, incremental progress and evolution. That means building internally and sustainably in a way that is responsive to the world around us and to the citizens within the country. It means engaging honestly with what isn't happening and what is happening, committing to improvement, and then improving on that. It means interacting with citizens not as beneficiaries of a selective generosity, but as individuals protected by the Constitution and their fundamental humanity. It is these called structural and consistent improvements that have the potential to become seismic shifts toward creating a democracy that sees, respects, and responds to all its citizens. Nothing exists or occurs in isolation, and what affects one, in some way or shape, will ultimately affect all. Our lives and our realities are often interconnected in ways that we do not immediately grasp or routinely experience. We think of this in relation to injustice, as is right. But let's imagine today the opposite. A world where the things that touch us all are fairness, inclusion, and honoring of your right to inclusive healthcare and free and good education. Might not be free. Your right to recourse for injustices caused against you. Think of your children if you have them. Think of the country you would have liked to grow up in as a child. Think of the freedom to exist in a place where you are not at more threat because you are a minority, and where your stability is not affected by where you are geographically located. Think beyond our current reality, even if it works in some way for you, to a country that works for all. I return to my earlier question. What does that Nigeria, a Nigeria that honors all its citizens, look like to you, whether you're here as an individual or representing an organization? As the activities progress and beyond today, I hope you will think seriously about this question, imagine the possibilities, grapple honestly with the answers, and then in our lives and in the work we do, work seriously to create a nation that works truly and fairly for all. Thank you very much.
Wow. Please, can we give Arit another round of applause? I would have said a standing ovation, but I feel bad for having made you people stand earlier when we did the anthem. So let's just, I think that speech was very powerful, especially because it did a great job of explaining the intersectionalities between the issues that we are going to be discussing today and then the issues that affect everyone else, because they are one and the same, right? Some people often say that, oh, you know, you people are always asking for your own special rights. Who do you people think you are? You want your own rights. No, we're saying everyone is supposed to have these rights, but certain people are excluded because of this and this and this reason. That's what we're doing here today, right? So I would advise that I hope you took notes, especially if you're like a government representative here, because there were also practical, actionable steps that you're supposed to take in your agency to ensure that discrimination is a thing of the past and that you become more inclusive and equitable to the people that you're serving. So yes, thank you so much, Arit. Please, another round of applause, everyone. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So without further ado, we're going to go right into the panel discussions. There's more hard-hitting information that we are here to share with you. I am going to begin introducing our panelists, and when I'm done with your bios, please help us come and take a nice little seat on stage, and then I will bring up the moderator and you can kick off your conversation. I'm going to start by reading Anyete Ewang's bio. I'm so sorry if I hope I got the pronunciation right. So Anyete is the Nigeria researcher at Human Rights Watch. Before joining Human Rights Watch, she worked as a senior staff attorney at the Social and Economic Rights Action Center in Nigeria. At HRW, her work focuses on in-depth research and reporting on key human rights issues in Nigeria, including conflict, displacement, and the protection of civilians in the context of security operations. Outside her institutional work, she has been deeply involved in grassroots activism, volunteering with local women's groups to promote economic empowerment for indigent women in Nigeria. Please, a round of applause for Anyete. Thank you. Our next panelist, Obioma Chukike, is a Nigerian intersex and human rights advocate and founder and executive director of Intersex Nigeria, which is the country's first intersex-led and focused organization advancing awareness, rights, and well-being of intersex people. Holding a master's in environmental conservation, they authored The Situation of Intersex Persons in Africa during the COVID-19 pandemic and the toolkit integrating intersex perspectives into healthcare policies for inclusive practice in Nigeria. Obioma serves as board chair of the African Intersex Movement, an ILGA World Board member, and is an alumnus of Outright International's UN Rights and Religion Fellowship and the ISHR Human Rights Defenders Advocacy Program. Please, a round of applause for Obioma. Thank you so much. Our final panelist for this panel, I would love to welcome Dorothy Njamanze, who is a media development strategist, safeguarding expert, and women's rights defender with over 2 decades of experience in nonprofit leadership and policy advocacy. She's the executive director of Dorothy Njamanze Foundation, which provides holistic support to survivors of sexual and gender-based violence through its Safe Space and Support Center in Abuja. Renowned for her role in a landmark ECOWAS court judgment advancing women's rights under the Maputo Protocol. Wow. Dorothy has also championed popularization of key policies, including the VAP Act and Gender and Equal Opportunity Bill. An IVLP alumna and recipient of Amnesty International's award, she leverages media advocacy and inclusive policy design to amplify vulnerable voices and promote gender equality, social justice, and sustainable development in Nigeria and across West Africa. Please, a round of applause. Thank you so much for joining us. And then I would love to introduce my colleague, Chimdimma Ike, who is the moderator of this panel and the director of programs at Tears. Please, a round of applause for Chimdimma.
Hi, good morning. Is it still morning? No, it's afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here. It's been amazing to hear all of the insightful conversation and, remarks from all of the speakers. We are here again, 11th time. That's 11 years. It's a big one. And on this first panel for today, which we are going to try to make very brief, we are going to be discussing, responsive democracy and how protecting human dignity for all through diversity, inclusion, and equity can be achieved. And I want to thank my panelists who are here. When I was hearing all of you guys who is worthy And we know that it diminishes we are supposed to be to what we aren't. So now I want to ask a general question to my panelists here today. You know, Nigeria, our country, you know, over time we have, you know, abided by some democratic indicators that says that Nigeria is a democratic state. And what we are seeing right now is that it has continued to weaken, and that vulnerable groups and people are increasingly facing violence. Every day on the news we see what we see. And I want to then ask you guys, based on your different points, the three of you work in different spheres of life and different cycles. So based on your vintage points, I want to ask Dorothy, to you first. What exactly does it take for us to rebuild the democracy of Nigeria so that it actively protects the dignity of everyone, especially LGBTQI people, women, intersex persons, and survivors of LGBT?
All right, thank you. A very good morning to everybody. Thank you for being a human being that counts in our time. Many are competing with stones for relevance. The definition of democracy is, so if I think that my not speaking up enough about the realities, I think that my not speaking up enough about the realities and how my realities impact the democracy I expect, you know, is an enabling factor for the democracy to keep on leaving me out. So, what should create an enabling factor? What should create an enabling factor for the democracy to favor us more is we need to tell our stories more. As survivors of sexual and gender-based violence, I see the charity model is extended a lot. And when the charity model is extended, you hear things like, oh, 100 victims rescued. It's not 100 victims rescued, it is 100 out of 350. So you should say 30% of those abducted rescued, not 100 rescued. There's a difference. And in telling our stories, we need to remember the importance of narrative. The narrative is being driven by the people who want to harm you. The narrative is being driven by power-drunk people. What is your narrative? Should you count as a human being? What are your intersectionalities? Are you a female, poor, pregnant, person with disability? What are the intersectionalities and what should come to you? So I think we're not telling our stories enough. I think we're letting a lot of people tell our stories for us. All the empowerment schemes that are available to Nigeria, what is the disaggregation of the data? To what extent does it affect community? What is the size of community that is known? Because a lot of people in a lot of marriages, if 1 in 3 women are said to be at least sexually curious, or bi-curious. If 1 in 3 women are said to be bi-curious, is it 2 in 3 women? Then it means that so many married women, you know, are putting up with a lot of, I don't know. Let me not make assumptions. But for whatever it is worth, what is the reality of people? So how are we coping? How is the democracy affecting? How is inflation affecting us? What is access to education like for us? Are our realities different from other people's realities? And when we speak about it, let us make sure that we amplify the fact that this is who we are and this is our peculiarity, so that we don't get lost in the course of, what is it, in the course of, wherever, we don't get lost, yeah?
Thank you so much for that. Before I move on, there's something you highlighted. You said intersectionality. A lot of, especially as a Nigerian, there's a lot of things. You said empowerment that is implemented just from a linear point of view. This point of view is just, oh, this person is a woman. They are not looking at all of the other factors, whether the person is queer or intersex or living with a disability and all of that. So we have to, like you said, put out the right information and hold people accountable to put in intersectionality in the work that they do for the populace. So to Obioma, in terms of the first steps that we as Nigerians and as civil society have to carry out for a responsive democracy, what do you say?
Thank you very much for that. Hello, everyone. I think that the speakers, from the Executive Secretary down to Dorothy, have summarized everything. But we have to first of all start looking at what democracy is. Why was democracy there in the first place? Colonization was there, and we wanted freedom. We wanted inclusivity. We wanted everybody's voice to matter. And that was how democracy gave birth. But if you look at what is happening now, the responsiveness of democracy has left the path that it was created in the first place and is in another path. And that path has a lot of default lines. And that is where we are now, where people are being marginalized, and where minority morals are now used as a standard of measuring who is meant to be part of any form of anything. And that is where we have to start looking at how to come back to why democracy was there in the first place. Like you mentioned in the beginning, it is for the people, by the people, and for the people. Everything is about the people. And one of the things that our leaders have done is that they have somehow managed to remove the power from us, to make us forget that we are the power. And I always tell people in my conversation that you are the only one that have the power to give someone your power. If you do not give someone your power, they can't take it away from you. So now going back to the question that you asked, one of the things that we have to start looking at, we're already doing it as civil society organizations, but we need the responsiveness of government. We need the responsiveness of institutions. We need to re-anchor that democracy should be looked at from the point of human dignity, not the point of who is the majority, who is the minority. And that means that for every vulnerable group, be it LGBTQI, persons with disability, survivors or victims of sexual and gender-based violence, anybody at all, we have to start looking at how we can all come together, and start pointing out what it is for what it is. And that means that we also have to look at how these institutions have for a long time forgotten what human dignity means. I like the fact that the Executive Secretary mentioned that there will be trainings for different parastatals from next year. Because if we look at our institutions, the challenge is not on the head or at the head. The challenge is with the desk officers, police officers are on the road, nurses, doctors, the primary respondents of our needs as vulnerable group. They have forgotten that they have to approach us from the point of dignity, not from the point of, oh, you don't matter. We are not elites, even though some of us are also elites, but the majority of us who suffer are not elites. So how to remove responsiveness from the elites to move it to the people that actually need it, who are the grassroots and the vulnerable people. Another way is the youth. When an average Nigerian graduates from any institution, do they have a job? Do they have access to jobs? Do they have access to any infrastructure that is domesticated to attend to their needs? So we also have to start calling out what it is for it. I know that we are not included in consultations. That is another bigger challenge, because most times when I have conversations with, I'm just coming from the Federal Ministry of Health before I came here, and when you're having conversations with these institutions, the thing that you always hear is, oh, we don't know that this is happening. Whether it's true or not, I don't know, but that means that they don't give us the opportunity to be part of those conversations. And it means that if you don't give me the opportunity to speak as an intersex person what my needs are, you might not be able to provide a budget line for it. That is why it's not there. And for someone with disability, you cannot assume that you have the needs if you do not hear from them. Or for any LGBTQI persons out there, you have to understand where the fundamental needs are coming from, where the root is. And the root is that people are hungry. People have been disenfranchised for a very long time. So it's not about casting the vote. It's about the people that you want them to come and cast the vote. Are they motivated? When they don't have the basic needs, they can't be participating in democracy. To finalize, I also think that we need to look at how, you mentioned about narrative, but we also need to look at how we ourselves as vulnerable people are speaking up in different spaces. I always tell people that You might be afraid, but what is the worst case scenario? If you do not speak about the need, it's going to be there. If you speak about the need, there's a probability that it will still be there. So what would you go for? It's not better that you speak about the need, right? I know that people are not bold enough. Everybody's not on the bold, category. But what we can do in our small spaces, we can call out these things as we see them. We can remind people that this is the reason why we are doing this. And a reminder does not necessarily mean that you have to be so active on social media. It means in your immediate space, in your in-house, how do people treat people? How do you treat people? So I think democracy has to reflect back on why democracy was actually founded, and that is the point of conversation where we need to start as vulnerable groups or as individuals.
Okay, I think this works. No, thank you. And before I start, allow me to say congratulations to the team at TEARS and to the National Human Rights Commission for putting this symposium together. I think it's so important that we gather to have these conversations to advance society. I think the earlier speakers made the work of this panel very easy, really speaking about democracy from a perspective of human dignity. To the extent that a democracy only thrives when we recognize that each citizen, each person, every one of us, whether or not we're sexual minorities, we're women, we're girls, we're people with disabilities, we live in a conflict or a crisis zone somewhere in the northeast or the northwest in some rural village where bandits or insurgency groups are operating every single day, that they're human beings and that the government has a duty to ensure that their rights are protected and promoted, that they live in dignity, essentially. But I think that's where the disconnect has happened in our society. The fact that, the authorities sit in their offices, many of our government officials are, trying to do, for the most part, what they can. But I think there is also a huge majority that really does not see the humanity in each and every one of us. There is, I hate that word elite. The elite, the political elite, even when it's used in financial terms as well. Because what makes you elite? An individual sitting in a village might be an elite runner. They might be an elite scholar. But if you do not give them the chance to actualize who they are to the fullest, then they will never become elite. So most of what we have now are things that have happened by circumstance, maybe a factor of where you were born, a factor of the sort of education that you have access to, a factor of the kind of corruption, the kind of mago-mago you were able to do to get into office. And it really doesn't reflect a democracy that is true to actualizing the potential of each and every one of its citizens. And so when we now start to think of centering our lived realities, as Dorothy spoke, really starting to reflect on what we experience in the country that we live in today, then it gives us markers, it gives us pointers for what we should tackle and who we should tackle. And from the work that I've done, a lot of it has been in the Northeast and in the Northwest documenting conflict and crisis. The most flagrant thing, the one thing that comes to mind is really, the breakdown of the rule of law. And I think this is also very, it centers also in the experiences of the LGBTQI plus community. To the extent that when we do not have, an accountable system of government, we do not have police officers, army officers that work in line with what has been established. Of course, anything happens. You have arrests that happen at will, detention that happens at will, and the impunity with which they operate is the most glaring thing to me. And a society that is unable to rein in its officials, that's unable to rein in through one way or the other, even though we have, the rules, the procedures, everything in our law books is one that is really not responsive. And I think as citizens, there was the point you made about how people are hungry. People cannot demand accountability. They cannot be a part of government. Now I'm using, the rule of law as just one example. There's so many other things, but I think we're short for time. So in terms of that, I think if we really want a people-centered democracy, people must act. people must use their voices. And that's where we also have CSOs really working to amplify these voices. People must struggle. No one is going to give you your human dignity just because. But we need to take up space. We need to stand before the authorities that are meant to promote, protect our human rights and demand this. So I think for our democracy to work, and also let me say that there's no perfect democracy world over. Everyone is working to consolidate democracy, to strengthen democracy. But in order for that to happen, people power must be at play. We cannot leave it up to the authorities to do what they feel like. Is pushing. We have to keep pushing to get to that point where we say our democracy actually works for us. It's not something that's going to be handed to us. We need to, the people in that democracy, for the people, by the people, and of the people really need to take center stage and really start to push for democracy to work. I mean, we're doing that, but I think we need to do a much better job. And there's so many examples, even in the last few years, of what has happened when people come together to really push and demand accountability, to push and demand that laws are changed, to push and demand that the police and the army are held accountable when they do things, to push and demand that their services, the right to healthcare, the right to education. And really, I think that's where we are as a society. We have the system that has been established, but we need to push to ensure that the systems work.
Thank you so much for that, Anyete. So you guys have spoken so beautifully, and in consolidating everything you guys have said, we are hearing that there's no democracy without the people. Absolutely. So where there's an absence of people, you can't have democracy. And it's important for us to remember that. Both of you talked about how we have to push out the narrative and be the speakers, right? We have to show up for democracy. We have to actually fight for it. If not, it will not be responsive. We all have that collective duty to hold tight to our dignity. And when we talk about dignity, I know we have mentioned the part of accountability from state actors and everything, but it's in our day-to-day life. I would say, and this might be off topic, that the average Nigerian struggles with understanding dignity, because not only from the family to the government, there's a lack of dignity given to us as people, even from children and parents, from teachers, from colleagues. And we need to go back to understand exactly what that is, because one of the precepts of democracy is human rights, and then the foundation of human rights is the fact that human dignity must and always be protected. So that's important, that in the course of doing our work, that we remember what dignity in itself means. So I just want to give ask a wrap-up question to the three of you seated here today. When we talk about this issue, we are different movements that make up civil society. A lot of times you see it's like a yo-yo. You hear that this movement and this movement is not in talking terms, or this movement, they don't want to do any work that has to do with this other movement. When we say we are human rights defenders, we are not some human rights defenders. We are human rights defenders, human rights for all, not for some. So I then want to ask, how do we ensure, because we cannot achieve our goal without standing together, how do we ensure cross-movement synergy that makes us better prepared to hold and make sure that the democracy in Nigeria is actually responsive for vulnerable groups?
Well, nothing about us without us. You can't shave my hair or plait my hair in the absence of my head. And that is something I hope everybody would hold dear to themselves. Now, every monster that is currently attacking us in Nigeria, whether it is the elitist spirit, or it is corruption, or it is hate against minority groups, have thrived on divide and conquer. And so they make us divided enough not to see the unity in the strength in our unity. I would say that the fantastic work we are doing in so many places. So for instance, DNF thought that we should analyze the 2025 budget and see how gender responsive it is, because we've heard a lot of verbal commitments by government on how the government means to address issues of sexual and gender-based violence. Now, our findings were very abysmal. A lot of critical issues are still not budgeted for. They didn't make it to 2025 budget. Guys, what month of the year are we in? When is the 2025 budget going to be passed? Let's leave that. Many ministries, departments, and agencies are still working on the tail end of 2023 budgets. And so these are realities that if you do not know, you are not going to, engage effectively with. We also had come together with other experts that, and we came up with a compendium of sector-specific solutions on inclusive leadership. And these things were not new innovations. They were things across different ministries, departments, and agencies that are already set in motion, that are supposed to meet the people at their point of needs. And we started this at the emergence of the new leadership that came in, at the new democratic era. Until today, a lot of those things have not been met. In fact, when we took them to states, our findings at state level are really very scary. Womanity Index was just released recently, and the findings are really very scary. And the findings are not further disaggregated to reflect the realities of, the LGBTQI communities. And so what am I saying in essence? We're doing fantastic work in many places, but maybe if we found way on our websites, on our social media pages, to amplify the mileages that other people are achieving, then it means that we collectively will be leveraging on our collective strength. Why am I saying it? What Arit said here today was a master class that anybody who is researching on democracy, especially democracy in Nigeria, is supposed to be privy to. So the key words, how do people put out their messaging there? Do they know the importance of hashtags? Do they know the importance of keywords? Do they know the importance of everything? It boils down to shaping our narratives. In the little communities, there are fantastic things people are doing. Sometimes the dividedness is not because they mean to be divided. It's because they don't know the best way to put their messaging forward, and it's counting against us. So we need to make more conscious efforts to bring together our resources and amplify our resources, so that if one search is done about democracy in Nigeria, the realities of everybody will feature. If one search is done about human rights in Nigeria, the realities will feature. If one search is done about access to justice, everybody's reality will feature. And not just the realities of those who control power. The few people, very, very, very few people we have entrusted power to, that are abusing power and we are saying nothing to. So we need to come together. We need to be more deliberate about it. And a practical way of being more deliberate about it is ensure that on your platforms, apart from promoting the things you do, you are promoting the things other people who are covering bases for you are doing. If you're not doing it, you're doing the wrong thing.
All right, to add to what Dorothy has mentioned, I think one of the reasons why movements are not working together, from my own analysis and what I've also seen, is apart from resources, right, I think we are also ashamed to affiliate with other people's issues. Let's take, for example, when I've seen this in women's group a lot. You go for a women's conference and then you are talking about some sensitive issues, even as an intersex person, and you start talking about intersex person or LGBTI plus persons, and then the narrative change immediately. And I'm like, I thought we were here to talk about human rights, right? And we all know that human rights is indivisible. So that means there is no human right that is bigger than the other. Every human right is equal and should share the same type of power and visibility. So I think one of the things is we have to truly ask ourselves, do we want to work together? And if we want to work together, we have to lay out not written terms, but a valuable term or principle term that aligns within across movements. I like the fact that you mentioned having like one maybe database that has everything there for Nigeria, let's say. And in doing that, we have to have a co-creative space. We have to have a co-creative space where let's envision, for instance, a biannual human rights conference that brings together every sector of human rights working in Nigeria to talk about what the year has been like and what can we push for together as a strategy the next year. So co-creating spaces is somewhere that we can all meet and have the ability to look at what each movement needs and how it's intersecting. Because like you mentioned, our oppressors are the same and our challenges are similar. It might not be unique, but they are similar. And the same oppressors are the ones that do not want the press to adequately report these issues. You get to some media houses and you want them to cover a story for you, even if you are ready to pay, and they will tell you, no, we can't cover that type of story. So when there's a selective human rights that can be featured and more above the other, that means movements will always shy away to acknowledge or affiliate themselves with another movement. So I think one of the things we have to tackle is to remove that shame of affiliation that we see across movements. And the last point I will make is around the need for data. We actually do not have accurate and sophisticated data that we should be able to have in Nigeria. Not that we don't have the ability, but maybe because we have not really focused on data collection. And when there is no data, there won't be policy. And when there is no policy, that means there is room for more violence and more violations. So it means that we have to look at how we can all come together and look for data that speaks to the numbers, that speaks to the needs, and speaks to the challenges, the real-time challenges, and also present those papers to the right authority together, not going as one person, but going together. Because there is unity when we all come together. And we also have to, I don't want to say, most of us also get resources from the same pool of funding. I know that. But resources should not be the reason why we cannot work together as movement, because it's simple. If a funder decides to fund 20 organizations or 20 NGOs, it doesn't mean that if they bring in new person, they're not going to continue funding you. So I don't see a reason why there should be even competition in the first place, even though that there is, a lot of needs out there. But I also think that leaders within the movement have a clarion call where we all have to come together. I've asked this question, for instance, why don't we have a national, for instance, a national Sojix movement in Nigeria that can come together once in a while to talk about how to work with other movements and how to work across movements. So it's about intentionality, if you ask me, including myself. If we are more intentional about how to work with each other, we can find a way around it. I know that Nigeria is difficult, trust me. To work in Nigeria as a civil society organization with all the laws that are all there around there, it is very, very hard to manipulate it and also navigate it. But if we all come together, we can see that there are some ideas that we can all formulate that can all help us work together. Thank you.
As working in human confusion, and even when there's room for confusion, you have a set procedure for dealing with those sort of conflicts. So I think that's really important, being intentional about how you create movements, and even when movements are created rapidly, still taking a step back to then set these these parameters or set an agenda in order for the movement to thrive. And I think it's really about strengthening each other. It's about leveraging each other's strengths, using what one organization does better to amplify the other work of the movement, and also really not struggling for center stage. It's often hard because of the funding issue which you mentioned. It's like we're all being funded by one organization, or even if we're not being funded by one organization, we're hoping that this organization funds us. And I think this is where we have to take feedback to our donors to say, you need to send that message clear and send it out widely, that you encourage organizations working together. It's not about competition, it's not about who does what best, but there's room for everyone to thrive, there's room for everyone to receive support, and that oftentimes the work is better done, it's able to achieve more when we all come together to do that. So I think it's also learning from the mistakes of past movements and really using that as we set our sights forward to do greater work together.
Thank you. You've shared your insights from, documenting violence across Nigeria and the work Human Rights Watch does in doing that, does in putting out that information, that data there, especially for vulnerable groups in Nigeria, is really commendable. And Obioma, your work around intersex rights in Nigeria, and not just in Nigeria and Africa. And Dorothy, your foundation's work around women's rights and also the ECOWAS judgment. And the three of you have shared your perspective and insight. I wish we had more time because we had more loaded questions, but we are a little bit late. So I just want to ask the House, just room for one question. Do we have any question to any of our panelists seated here? I hope not. All right, thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anete, Obioma, and Dorothy. Lovely session. And let's come down and take some pictures by this side.
Please, while they're doing that, I think we know the drill at this point, right? Another round of applause, please. Please, please, please. A very insightful conversation, very packed. I mean, I think at this point it's kind of obvious what we need to build a responsive democracy. Do I have the attention, guys? Or do we want to let them finish the photos, then we continue? Unfortunately, we don't have that time. Anyway, but yes, it starts with you. A responsive democracy actually starts with you. It is you, on the one hand, holding institutions and governments accountable when they leave people behind, and then on the other hand, figuring out what you can do within your own space, with your community, with your organizations, and how we can all come together to respond to some of these gaps in democracy that we have identified in some of these panels. Without further ado, I'm just going to go straight into the conversation about the reports. I will be presenting some of the data that we have uncovered this year. Trigger warning, it is quite traumatic and harrowing. So I just want you to prepare your minds because we'll be talking through some of these things right now. So I introduced myself at the beginning of this conversation, but for those who just joined us or joined in between that time, my name is Alexandra. I am the Senior Program Officer, Human Rights and Advocacy at TEARS. And I'm going to be speaking about human rights violations faced by people who are or are perceived to be members of the LGBTQI+ community. So that's if you are perceived to be, you are liable, you are likely to experience certain violations, and we're going to look at what those things look like. Yeah, okay, so that's the introduction. For context, we, TEARS, have partnered with several organizations, 24 organizations at this time, to document human rights violations across the country against people who, are part of the, SOGIES community, right? Sorry, 1 second. Just give me a moment. Okay, right, yeah. So these violations, they've always been there, to be very honest, because there's always been the cultural bias. Well, not always. We can trace it back. Okay, I'll just go ahead with this one. Yeah, so I was saying that our culture and our religion, they have been intertwined, right? Our religions and our cultures have been intertwined, and that happened during colonialism. However, that was not the time. Obviously, we were not around at that time, so we were not able to really document what was happening. However, we have accounts, historical accounts that, well, not accounts per se, but like the fact that we have certain indigenous terminologies for, queer experiences, and I use queer as an umbrella term for people who have diverse sexual orientations, gender identity and expression, and sex characteristics, like I mentioned at the beginning, right? So people have biases towards these people because of that intertwining of our culture and our religion that came as a result of colonialism. But fast forward to, more recent times, like 2014, that was when we experienced a spike in human rights violations against this demographic of people that I have just mentioned. And why did that happen? Because of the passage of the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, which basically signaled to the general public that, oh yeah, these people, we actually don't do whatever you want, right? And that's been the case since then till now. We have experienced rising violations against people. Every year the number increases. Every year the stories are more harrowing as a result of the fact that, the state has basically turned its back on a certain demographic of people. Obviously, we can allege that the state has turned its back on everyone, right? And that still takes us back to the point of intersectionality that we've been making all day, which is that if the democracy does not respond to a certain group of people, it's not going to respond to you. It's not going to respond to everyone, because who do you think you are, in quotes, right? Like Nigerians tend to do that. Who do you think you are? I mean, I'm a human being, right? So I deserve to have my rights respected, regardless of your biases or prejudices. But yes, we're going to be looking at the impact of biases and prejudices and this legal climate that we now have on the lives of LGBTQI plus people. So please, okay, please go back. I mentioned the SSMPA, but before the SSMPA, there was, sections of the criminal code, sections of the penal code, Sharia laws that described, some of them explicitly mention relations that one would describe as queer. However, others mention things like, sex against the order of nature, unnatural offenses, things like that, which can be interpreted one or two ways, right? So before the SSMPA, it was not exactly explicit, but now there is one dedicated law targeting this group of people, which sent a large signal, like I earlier mentioned. Okay, we can go to the next one. Regardless of all of this, and bear in mind this is happening within the context of the fact that the National Constitution is the ground norm, and it is supposed to guarantee the rights to freedom from discrimination, right to privacy, freedom of expression, human dignity. It's supposed to guarantee all these things for everyone. And then in the same vein, we now have laws that target specific people for who they are, right? So that is a very interesting context that we are existing under. Nigeria is also a signatory to several international treaties that uphold the rights of all people, particularly people of diverse SOGIESC, right? And it is still under this context that we are facing all of these violations. We can go to the next slide, please. Right, so what are the violations? What's the statistics for the year? This year we have data from 27 states, 397 people violated. In this room, we are not up to 100. So just imagine 3 times this number of people facing violations, right? And then obviously 282 number of, the cases, 282. Some of them involved mass arrest and all of that, which is why you have that disparity between the number of people violated and the number of cases that were reported, right? Some of the perpetrators were state actors, but an overwhelming majority is non-state actors. That is neighbors, family members, loved ones, intimate partners, people that you go out every day with, healthcare workers. Okay, well, police is state actors, but yes, I think you get the gist. And then about 21 cases involve the combined action of state actors and non-state actors, because sometimes we find, someone is violated by their close community. They say, oh, let me go to the police and let me go to the courts and report these cases, and then they face added violations there because they're not like, oh, why did this thing happen to you? Or is it because you're one of them? Oh yeah, no. Then they now start their own violation there. So this is what we're looking at right now. The highest cases were reported from Lagos, Abuja, Kaduna, Abia. Lowest cases from Ekiti, Plateau, Zaria, Akwa Ibom. And this is not to say this is where the highest cases happen or this is where the lowest cases happen. It's more to say that this is where we're getting reports from. So maybe there are more active community organizations there who are doing work and then feeding the data back. Or, so that's what that data is saying. It's not necessarily saying this is where it's worse and this is where it's not. So yes, we also have the data of people who are violated broken down by their gender identity. And an overwhelming majority of them are men. And again, this does not say that the violations particularly happen the most to men, but it also just reflects a gap in the data, right? And that I think that begs for further inquiry. Like, okay, does this mean that men are more emboldened to report, and women are not? What is the situation there? Those are some of the questions that this data raises for us, and that some of our research work tries to address. Okay, we can go to the next one. So these violations that we have looked at, the large number has been broken down to what kinds of violations. I see that some of these things are not visible, so I'll just mention the most prominent ones. We had 102 cases of blackmail, 72 cases of assault and battery, assault on its own 86, harassment 75. Yeah, so what this data is saying, we will see it in upcoming slides, but the most persistent form of violations, like I initially mentioned, happens with non-state actors, like family members, community members, immediate environment, right? And then one more persistent form of violation is called KITO, right? We locally refer to it as KITO, where someone is lured off, like they meet someone on a social media site, and that person is lured. And mind you, this could be for whatever reason. They might be looking for community. They might be looking for partnership. They might be looking for businesses. In fact, right now, people are saying, come, I will give you business, I will give you work. But they are targeting these people, like, because they know that these people are queer, and they cannot go and report to police. So they find this particular group of people, they lure them offline and pretend to be their friends and family members, and then they are blackmailed, assaulted, stripped. The horrors are endless. I want to refrain from traumatizing everyone, but I would have to mention a few cases. Well, not mention a few cases, but let's just say people have lost their lives in this process of keto. And even as we speak right now, there's probably at least 10 people being ketoed in this state alone. If you now think about other places that are considered keto hotspots, it's a very lucrative business for these people. And again, I want to mention that these violations that we're seeing, I think, okay, I can't identify kidnapping here, but that also has one of the highest data. So it's kidnapping, blackmail, assault. So those three usually come together because they will have to confine you in a certain space before they can do all of these things, and then call your family members and say, do you know your son is this? I'm going to actually, give us money or I will kill him, right? It's the regular kidnapping that everyone knows, and we all know that it's on the rise. Kidnapping is on the rise, insecurity is on the rise, and that is reflected also in the most marginalized communities. It affects them exponentially because, again, they can't even go anywhere to seek support. And a lot of the time, family members turn their backs on people who have experienced this. Because if they call you as a parent and say, oh, your child is this, did you know? Bring money or else a lot of people, out of shame or fear of what society will say, sometimes they just turn their backs on them. We've seen that happen a lot. But that's by the way. Yeah, you have the reports. Everyone will have the reports, and you can see the data more specifically. We can go into the next slide because we're going to talk a little bit more about what the data has looked like over the years. We recorded the highest number of violations in 2023. And that could be because of a combination of factors. One, we expanded our reporting network from, I think, about 18 to 24. And then, that was just a generally hard year, hot year for everyone. However, we have seen a decline. I want to give you a disclaimer that this data in 2023 does not indicate that the violations have reduced. It does not. We have a network of 24 partner organizations. However, the capacity of these organizations was greatly reduced this year due to the stop work order that affected everyone. So people were not able to gather data, respond to data. So calling it data kind of removes the human factor from it. We were able to respond to about 996 cases in 2023, and our capacity to do that has steadily declined since then. And that, I think, reflects a large problem that even the community organizations that are doing their best to fill in, the gaps that are left by the government are also losing that capacity as time goes by. So what does that mean? More people are dying, more people are losing their futures, more people are losing their homes and families. And it's really a very depressing and shocking situation to have to engage with, but this is the reality and we cannot turn away from it. We all have a collective responsibility to build a responsive democracy. So that's why we're here today. Well, let's go to the next. Right, so I've mentioned how we gather this data, our partner organizations send in data, we send in data, we clean it up, and then we analyze the trends, we break it down by, gender, and even we try to also break down the identities of the perpetrators. Let's really understand who is doing this thing and what is their motive so we can try and tackle it from that point. And then we've just identified that it is bigoted family members and bigoted community members who are looking for a quick buck. I think capitalism is the biggest driver of the violations against LGBTQI+ people. Capitalism combined with their biases. So they know, because of their biases, they know that they can get away with it, and they know that they can extract a quick buck from these people. So that's just the situation. It's not even about, it's no longer about what is right or what is wrong in quotes anymore. Please, let's go to the next one. Right, so I have mentioned some of the violations that are rampant, that always happen. The data every year kind of looks the same, except when, like this year where we were not able to respond as we usually would. But state actors typically conduct mass arrests, illegal stops and searches. So those mass arrests, right, what happens is they can come into this space right now and arrest everybody, right? And they will just say, oh, you people are doing a gay marriage, and that's it. How are they going to prove that we're doing it? They don't need to. All they need to do is arrest everybody, take them to jail, harass, torture, keep them in inhumane situations, and then any normal person would say, okay, what do I need to do to get out of here? What do you need, right? And that's how they end up getting extorted. It is a very lucrative business for all involved. Violating human rights of LGBTQI+, it is money. That is not anything else. So yes, we've mentioned profiling, harassment. They stop you, they search you, they'll say, because you look like this, obviously because of my hair like this now, that's enough. They will just be like, oh yeah, open your phone. They start looking at your phone. If they find anything, they will hold on to that one. That's how you end up giving them anything from like, what, 10K to 1 million. There was a case, the person paid 1 million before he was released. Please go to the next slide. These are very difficult conversations, but they have to be had. We're looking at non-state violations now, like violations that non-state actors perpetrate. We've talked about keto, community and neighborhood violence. We've talked about that because aside the lucrative part of it, there's just people who cannot keep their thoughts or biases to themselves. And if someone is passing, they're going to make commentary, they're going to incite them to the situation and get whatever it is they want. There's always commentary around, so you be gay. Why are you like this? There's always commentary around, so you be gay. Why are you like this? Because I'm going to send your this. Because I'm going to send your this to you. But even in those situations, people get sexually assaulted. So you now you're saying I'm a gay, so you saying I'm a gay, so you deserve this violence. But you're still also. So what does that mean? Like, what's going on? What's happening? So again, personal gain, power, capitalism, these are some of the drivers of violence if you actually look at it. And then there's also technology-facilitated harassment and misinformation. Arik mentioned earlier that there's a rise in TFGBV against women, queer women, non-queer women, queer people in general against women, queer women, non-queer women, queer people in general as well, right? Because once they just see your page, it's not hard. All of those incels paint you in a certain light, blast it on their platforms. That happens a lot. Like they have a lot of unsolicited news where they dox people. That is a culture. That's the online culture. This is particularly for LBQI women. They say, no, we need to change that name. But corrective rape in quotes is where, a family member will see this person, like someone like me, and be like, this person is masculine. Why are you doing like this? You're wearing this clothes. It's like you want to do this, da. I'm going to call someone for you. They'll call someone, and that's how the person is assaulted under their own family roof, their safe space. This is a rampant practice, including, also there's also forced marriages, which is a more long-term form of corrective rape. Housing discrimination, systemic barriers, denial of healthcare, things like that. Yeah, of healthcare, things like that. Yeah. You can read more about it in the report. You can read more about it in the report. There's way more context and case studies there for you to. Can I have the next slide, please? And the situation we see now, a lot of opportunists taking advantage of prejudices, biases, and broken systems to enact harm and violence on people. That is the situation everywhere, regardless of people's SOGIESC. But yes, what can we do about this situation? We've heard some of it. I think Ari's speech was very descriptive, and I really love the dedication, the emphasis on the fact that you should be ready to be wrong, even if you say, okay, it's cool, let's look for an action plan to reduce discrimination and boost inclusivity in our national, agency. If you say that and you develop an action plan and you start the trainings, it's also very important that you remain open to feedback from the people that you're trying to include, right? So if you want to train your people on, maybe queer inclusion or non-discriminatory practices, you need to consult the communities that are being discriminated against and find out the best ways to pass on this information to the people you are training. And you need to remain, is like someone gets violated, they're beaten up, and then they go to the hospital because they need help, and they are turned away because people will actively say, I cannot treat you because of my beliefs, even though that person took an oath, right? So to the NHRC, continuous SOGIESC focused human rights training, because as we heard the ES in his speech earlier, that is something that they've done, and they have engaged community organizations to be able to do that. We really applaud that, and we hope that that continues. Yes, we've also mentioned strengthen collaboration with CSOs, issue public statements against incitement to violence on discrimination. I think the NHRC is never quiet on where its support lies. So yeah, those are a few recommendations. To the Nigerian police force and other policing agencies, thank you very much. And arbitrary stops, such as raids and arrests targeting LGBTQI+ people, and train officers on the Police Act. Co-develop training materials with civil society to address bias and misinterpretation of laws, promote human rights education within the police system, and prosecute perpetrators of violence against LGBTQI+ persons. I hope we have a representative in the audience that is taking notes. We really appreciate your presence. Thank you so much. And then to CSOs, because we all have a responsibility, no one is left out, integrate LGBTQI+ rights into broader human rights, health, and gender programs. This is because it's not a foreign introduction. If you look at human rights, health, and gender, it concerns everyone. Everyone has human rights. Everyone has health. Everyone has a gender, right? So it makes sense to zero in on the particular identities of the people you're working with and try and respond to their needs adequately. Engage national, regional, and international human rights mechanisms. Serve as visible allies. I want to mention that an ally is someone that follows the format that Arit outlined earlier, where you seek information, you learn information, and you remain open to being told that you are wrong. Because that is that helps you have a more continuous approach, a consistent approach to getting better and being a better ally for the people that you're trying to support. Collaborate with queer organizations to ensure that no one is left behind. And then to medical institutions, I think that one is kind of clear. Stop being discriminatory, enforce your ethics, your code of ethics, ensure equitable access to necessary and vital services. Yeah, okay, let's see what the next slide is saying. Oh, okay, we have more. To employers and labor institutions, enforce anti-discriminatory workplace protections. It's so interesting because I saw a research that was based in Johannesburg, where they were examining the experience of queer women in the workplace. And this is a society that they don't have any criminalizing law against LGBTQI+ people, yet the queer women there face compounding discrimination. So they are able to come out and say, I'm queer and I'm a worker, I'm a professional, right? However, as a result of that declaration, they can be depromoted, not depromoted, like they can be stunted, essentially. They can face microaggressions at the office. They can be removed from any key assignments that they may be on, they might have been put on. They face consequences for their identity, basically. Now imagine a society where you can't even say, this is who I am in the first place, because you risk arrest. Anyway, I'll leave you to chew on that. Family and friends, seek queer-affirming education. I tell everybody, you probably have a queer person near you, even if you're not. Even if you don't know, because everyone, like, it's as random as anything. You probably do. And to be a better family member, to be a better friend, it is your responsibility to learn how to better support the queer people in your family, or the people who may be having queer experiences as a result of how they present. To faith-based institutions, promote love-based, inclusive practices, and create safe spaces for survivors of violence, and host conversations that challenge stigma and foster understanding, as opposed to the one-directional way where somebody like me is on the pulpit and saying, this is what's up, this is what's up, and you are in the audience just digesting everything they are saying without any form of interrogation or whatnot. So there needs to be more spaces, like the Bible study format where everyone sits together and they talk about like love-based principles, inclusive principles. I think that would create a more healthy mindset and approach to community. Let's see what the next slide is saying. I'm trying to quickly get to the end. So you remember when I mentioned the partners that we work with? Some of their logos are here. I will be calling them out in the next, in fact, I think let's just do that. So we're actually at the end of my presentation. Thank you everyone for your attention. It's not easy digesting all this data and traumatic information, so I really appreciate you. Thank you. So we want to go into the photo op and launch of the actual reports. Let me see real quick. 1 second, excuse me. Okay, so I think this is the time that I'm going to, wait, 1 second. Do I call everyone up? And then okay, let's do that. Okay, I hope our partners are here. I can see some of them. I would love to recognize and welcome to the stage Access to Good Health Initiative, Dynamic Initiative for Healthcare and Human Rights, Hope Alive Health Awareness, Improved, I hope we're paying attention. If I call your organization, please come up. We want to launch the report and do, pictures. I just mentioned Hope Alive Health Awareness, HAHI, Improved Sexual Health and Rights Advocacy Initiative, ISHRAE, Initiative for Improved Male Health, IMH, International Center for Advocacy on Rights to Health, Keto Diaries, Total Health Empowerment and Development Initiative, 30, Women's Health and Equal Rights, WHERE, Men's Health Support Initiative, MHSI. Nobody's here? Okay, it's all right. Initiative for Sexual Reproductive Health and Rights Awareness, ISHRA. Achievers Improved Health Initiative, IHE. Initiative for Gender Equality, Health and Rights, GEHARI. Initiative for Gender Equality and Sexual Reproductive Health, IGSRH. Community Health Initiative for Youths in Nigeria, CHIN. Okay, like they stepped out. Pure Hearts for Youth and Vulnerable Persons Initiative, PIAP Initiative. International Center for Total Health and Rights Advocacy Empowerment. Access to Health and Rights Development Initiative, RD. Responsive Action for Sustainable Empowerment Initiative, RAISI. Creme de la Creme House of Fame Foundation, CDLC. Response to Health and Rights Initiative, RHRI. Wave Makers Initiative for Health and Youth Empowerment, Y. Initiative for the Advancement of Improved Health and Development, Minority Watch. Okay. Some of our partners that are Abuja-based were here, but they probably stepped out. Regardless, I would love to welcome our ED, Afolabi Ayela, to come and officially launch the reports. Please, round of applause, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
So hold on.
Yeah.
The people that you just called, where are they?
They are not here. But I want to speak
All
to
of
somebody
them.
very quickly. I feel like he's a member of the... Let me...
Supposed to do a good picture.
Yeah,
Nobody
when
came
we
out.
are done with this,
Nobody came out.
we'll tell everybody to come up. That's what we do. You two say.
Okay. Again, just want to thank everybody for being here. Let me even start by doing this. How many, just by a show of hands, how many of us, this is our first time of being to this symposium? Oh, that's beautiful. Okay, so at least it's a learning curve for some of us. So this report that my colleague Alex has gone through great lengths to really dissect, which is really important and is something that we do annually. We usually use this forum, this symposium, to launch this report. And so we've been doing this for a couple of years now, and we want to continue in the culture of doing that because we know how valuable this document is, especially in highlighting lived experiences and things that we are going through. Not just that we have gone through, but we are currently going through that need, the redress and the necessary change that we're looking for. So I would like to officially launch this report on behalf of not just TEARS, but the organizations that we work tirelessly throughout the year to collate. This is a symbol of even not just collating, but in fact the help, the services that we have provided, even in litigation, even in the holistic responses that we have been a part of. So I hereby launch this report for this year, and here's to even many more reports like this. But the thing is, the hope is that when the reforms are done and when changes are made, that the violations here continue to reduce until we don't have to do this anymore. Thank you very much.
Call on members seated to come up quickly for us to take some pictures with the report. Okay, let's take some pictures before you go. All right, please can we all come up? For those who have been here before, we usually do this where we all come on stage and take pictures. So let's just quickly do that and get into the, yeah. So okay, please, can we just have civil society organizations stay back and international organizations? Civil society organizations, CSOs, NGOs, and international organizations. Let me stay with you. Thank you everyone for that. We'll just quickly get into the next thing. We have just about 40 minutes before we wrap for today.
All right, how are we feeling? I hope we are energized because we have one more panel before the end of style, ensuring that no one is left behind. And this insecurity has to do with both offline and online spaces, because it's about time we addressed the insecurity that is happening in the online spaces, because it truly is an eyesore over there right now. So I'm going to call up our first panel. As usual, I'm going to read their bio and then they can come up and take a seat, and then I'll invite the moderator and we can start the panel. But please forgive me, I'm going to try and summarize bios as much as possible. You people are all very important people, and I'm just sorry in advance to have to cut some of your achievements short. But I will invite Hawa Shafi Nuhu, who is a conflict reporter from Nigeria with bylines in several international publications. She's currently the managing editor at Home Angle Media, where, please, round of applause for Hawa, thank you so much. And then I'm going to invite, who is currently serving as a principal legal officer at the NHRC. She works to promote and protect human rights in her work and has nearly a decade of experience working on a wide range of human rights issues. Please put your hands together for Chioma. Thank you so much for joining us today. And then our final panelist, I'm going to invite Bemisola Adewale, who is a lawyer, researcher, and women's digital rights and safety officer at TechHer NG. Where she works on technology-facilitated gender-based violence, digital insecurity, and online harms affecting women, girls, and other vulnerable communities in Nigeria. She brings experience from working across governance, elections, and civic tech reporting with a strong background in disinformation analysis and evidence-based advocacy. Please, round of applause for Bemisola. Thank you so much for joining us. And then I will invite our moderator, my colleague, Damola Bolaji, who is the Senior Comms and Advocacy Officer at TIERS. Please, round of applause for Damola. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you all so much for being here and also joining us for this panel discussion. This is our second panel discussion for the event, and this time we'd like to talk about insecurities in the online space. Thank you so much for joining this important discussion, and it's nice to have everyone here. And so for this panel discussion, the idea came from the fact that we talk about democracy a lot, and there's insecurities in the physicals as well. As you all know in your work with data and online spaces as well, with regards to gender-based violence for women, girls, and vulnerable communities. We know that there are things happening online that even our policies in the country have not caught up to at all. We have, as someone mentioned, AI images that are stripping women of their dignity and their privacy, with harassment, and of course, the main thing that we know about is the keto cases that all start online and then moves offline. This panel would like to explore just how much these online insecurities affect the physical insecurities as well, displacement, and also all sorts of discrimination against the community. So Hawa, I will start with you. So my first question to you is, want to explore what linking online harassment to physical insecurity and displacement. From your reporting at Humango, how does online harassment, especially targeted hate and doxing and coordinated misinformation, translate into the real world threats, insecurity, and even displacement for marginalized communities?
Hi, Damola. Hi, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon. Important conversations here today. There's a lot that's going on in the online space that is increasingly translating to actual physical communities, especially for vulnerable communities across Nigeria. There's a lot of misinformation targeted across queer people, women, and intersex people. And the rationale behind that is usually that people who are not perfect should not be seen speaking online. And so you will find that whenever a woman that's in the public eye comes forward to speak about a societal issue, the response is not to refute the value of what she's saying, but to cast aspersions on her character. So you see people say things like ashao, which has always confused me, right? Because it means prostitute, right? I'm not sure that the word in itself should stand as an insult. We can talk about the inherent exploitation in the industry, but to call the word itself an insult to women, I don't know, that just sounds very interesting to me. I have experienced something similar. I once led a protest in Minna as part of the Northern Nigeria's Me Too movement, and I carried a placard that said, "Your penis is not above the law." I really think it's a very logical thing. There really isn't any part of the human body that is above the law. But then it got posted on social media, and as you can imagine, there were lots of people saying stuff about me, and the word ashao flew around a lot. And I remember concerned friends and family at the time saying, "No, you should go out and post on social media that you are not a prostitute." And I'm like, who does that benefit? That kind of even gives credence to what they're saying, which is that because you're a sex worker, you do not have the right to say that a man's penis is not above the law. So as much as it is important to call out this mis and disinformation against women and vulnerable communities, we should also ensure that it does not take the spotlight away from the actual thing that matters, which is the activism, which is the conversations around human rights violations. Misinformation usually is done unintentionally. It's that somebody just sees information that is false, and they do not stop to think or verify whether it is false, and they share it. This information is a lot more intentional. It is strategic. It is somebody or a group of people sitting down and thinking, how can we discredit this person online, and then bringing up all kinds of things to share about them. It happens a lot with women, like I've said, but also with queer people, and most especially also with intersex people. So these are some tactics that have been used in recent times to discredit women and members of vulnerable communities in Nigeria.
Thank you so much. And touching on what you said about people discrediting the person and less of discrediting what the idea was about, I thought about Senator I can't remember her name, her son, Natasha. I won't call her Natasha. So somebody has. I remember Alec telling me that, have you noticed that as people are talking online, they'll say Senator Akpabio, but when it comes to the woman, they'll say Senator Natasha. Like the disrespect is just very apparent. So I've been very conscious of that as well. And thank you for highlighting that. It really is true about really what happens in those cases. So I want to come to Gbemisola based off of that as well. For technology and gender and shrinking of safe spaces for especially women and marginalized communities online, with increasing surveillance, harassment, and algorithm-driven targeting, how are online spaces becoming more dangerous for women, sexual minorities, and people with disabilities? And what can technology or policy do to reverse this trend?
To answer that question, I would say that, especially regards our algorithm, I would say that most of the platform owners, I mean primarily, the platforms are made for profit. They do not center the person, and so whoever is quick to post things that are inflammatory, things that would trigger reactions from people, those are the ones that are getting benefit from the platform. So primarily that is a problem. And to answer how the trend can be reversed, I would say that it is a collective responsibility. A lot of conversations today has been going on about how we cannot do this alone, we have to work together. And collective responsibility starts from every one of us seated here. First of all, it is important for us to know that you need to be an active bystander. First of all, bystander, according to the law, is someone who just sees and says nothing. But when you come across this injustice, this harassment, this cyberbullying, situations of doxing online, it is important for you, for us as an active bystander to report those posts. If it is safe enough, you can speak to the perpetrator, or you can also offer comfort to the survivor. And being an active bystander is also, it can be tricky because, you know, there are instances where pictures are posted on Twitter and then you want to quote it. But then when you quote those pictures, you're bringing attention to it. Yes, so doing that, you shouldn't do that. So it is important for you to just quietly report the post and do that as necessary. So that is for the collective. Secondly, I would say that every stakeholder involved also has a responsibility. Policy, no, let me start with the platform owners. Yeah, so I would say that, you know, I was talking about the need to report as an active bystander, but we have observed in our work at TECA that sometimes the process of reporting is very cumbersome. If I want to report a post targeting a queer person on Twitter, I have to click on a section and it says, oh, is this offensive, is this sexual, is this violence, is this something, and then I click one and then some other options come down, and the more you click, sometimes the more confusing it gets. Yes, and I think it is deliberate to discourage people from doing that. So it is important for the platform owners to make the reporting process simple and straightforward. I also want to talk about the need to quickly attend to reportage when it is eventually done. Sometimes it takes weeks, it takes months for them to pull down a post, and sometimes they don't do it at all. Yeah, so, and sometimes you report an account, they just tell you, oh, do you want to block this account so that you stop seeing their post? No, I don't just want to block, I want them out of the space. But they don't offer you this option. So I think it is important for the platform owners to put that in the regulation. Then to policy actors, our government institutions, I was telling someone recently that it is not just to tax the platform owners. It's not just to collect money from them. If you want to show that you actually care for your citizen, like we said today, injustice to one is injustice to all. If the most vulnerable person in the society is unsafe, everybody is unsafe. So you need to be able to show that you have concern for your citizens. And this comes to the place of accountability. Right, the government and the institutions need to hold these platforms to account. In Canada, for example, if there are posts that have been put up on Meta, Facebook, if the period of reportage, within the period of reportage, you don't pull it down, the government tax Facebook. So, and they were very strict with it. At the moment, Facebook had to leave Canada physically. Yeah, so that is a government that shows that they actually care for the people. So it is important to show that accountability. And to civil society, we are also very important actors in the process. Like we have been saying since morning, collaboration is important. We need to work together. There are instances where one organization has more cases, so much so that they are overstretched, and there are others that don't have as much. So it is important to work together to ease the burden. And also the importance of research. I really love the research that TS did. I think it's really important. We need the data, we need the numbers, we need the evidence to even push for reform. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bemi. Choma, I'll come to you. Your work with human rights, National Human Rights Commission is really
is really broad because you deal with cases a lot as a lawyer as well. You deal with cases with state actors, non-state actors, and on different levels and different states even. So I wanted to ask you, based off of what we're talking about, what is the government doing about cases like this? Do you feel like the government's response to these cases, do you think it is apt? I know the law is still catching up. What are the things that you feel can be done or that the government still needs to do to bridge that gap?
Thank you for the question. Before I start, I would like to state that digital rights are, in fact, they are like real life. There is no difference between digital space and real life anymore. In fact, before you go to the US now, when you make an application, you need to submit your social media profile for over like 5 years for them to scrutinize it. So what that is saying is that there is no difference between digital space and real life. For us at the Commission, we are independent and we are also part of the state. We've been doing a lot of work at the Commission. Sometimes we get cases by way of complaint, and sometimes we also take a lot of them by suo motu. What that means is that we see cases online affecting vulnerable people, including LGBTIQ people, and we take it up. I could recall in 2022, there was a case we saw online. A cross-dresser was arrested in Kogi State, and nobody brought it to us. We saw it and we took it up. The cross-dresser, I mean, imagine that you're being arrested for the clothes you bought yourself and you wore it yourself, you know? So we had to follow up with that case, and this person was detained with the military. And as at that time, the place that military facility was a no-go area. So we have offices across the 36 states, so our coordinator in Kogi State had to follow up with that case. There is also another case that's happened in Bauchi that we went to court, the Ningi 3. I know some people might be aware of the case, where 3 men were sentenced for sodomy. The commission, in fact, they were to be stoned to death. The commission stepped in and appealed that case, and they were released. We've also had issues, cases where persons having parties were arrested in Anambra and other states, and we also engaged the Commissioner of Police for that state, and they were released. So these are part of the efforts the National Human Rights Commission is making, and we also strengthen our relationship with our civil society partners who we work with. Sometimes they draw our attention to some of these cases, apart from the ones we saw. And there are also instances where we invite these people, they don't come to the commission when we notice it because of stigma and fear of retaliation. So the commission is really taking steps on their part to work with, in fact, we're having this program today, says a lot, and even from what the ES has done, we're going to be hosting a nationwide training next year for law enforcement agencies. And earlier in the year, we had an advocacy engagement across the states where we sensitized the law enforcement agencies and HISPA. Also, we developed a guideline for arrest, detention, and prosecution of key and vulnerable populations, guideline to law enforcement on how to deal with arrest, detention, and prosecution. So these are some of the steps that the Commission is taking to protect the rights of vulnerable people. Even, I think sometime, I can't remember what month, we issued an advisory on freedom of expression. It does not also, it's not also just of digital space. It also includes digital space on how to engage and avoid hate speech. And also when we receive complaints from partners, we follow up, we document, we investigate, and we also protect the rights of those persons. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shoma. I will stay with you on that. So we are talking about our CSOs working together and combining our efforts and all. So I was really happy to hear about, the sensitization trainings you did with the police and some other people as well. So I was wondering, NHRC is doing so much to tackle these cases and all. I was wondering if you partner with other, maybe like the police and other bodies to actively, so yes, you train them, but are there any cases where you've actively collaborated with these bodies? Because we would work in collaborated with these bodies, because we would work in our sphere of influence. And I believe that the NHRC has even a larger sphere of influence for policy making and things like that. So NHRC is doing so much. It feels like you're even doing the heavy lifting at this point. Are there other agencies that you guys are collaborating with that are also doing some heavy lifting to tackle these cases of online harassment and things like that?
Yes. So I would state that we employ multi-sectoral approach. We have human rights desks across the police stations. Like sometimes when we receive a complaint, all we need to do sometimes is make a phone call. Because we have built partnership with organizations, even under the Global Fund project that we are implementing, we also have multi-sectoral partners. I could also recall during the flooding that happened last year, there were multi-sectoral coordination. So we have partnership with different offices, even with CSOs, that all we need to do is either bring a letter, release a statement, or do a phone call, and they respond to our request. So we are still building on that, and we have to also keep strengthening that partnership because it's not enough. And sometimes you will still see that some of these law enforcement is not like many of them that knows how to work around this, right? So we keep strengthening the partnership we have. It's never enough. We have to keep strengthening what we have.
Thank you so much. Because it's, as we work in our sphere of influence, it's a comfort to hear that the work is also moving from the government angle as well. So thank you for that. How I'll come back to you. For narratives, hate speech, and escalation of things like this online, we increasingly see hate speech and dehumanizing narratives online, fueling hostility offline as well. You have, you have people who are being undressed with AI, and then I think Zikoko did something recently and interviewed one of those ladies whose image was used online and undressed with AI on Twitter. And we find people in the comments wondering, oh, what did you wear at first? And then the next thing, she's saying that she even got recognized outside, and online has shifted to offline now. So my question is, what patterns have you observed in how digital hostility becomes a justification for violence and policing abuses or social exclusion for these people who are harassed?
One trend that has become increasingly obvious to me, that I don't think a lot of us are paying a lot of attention to, is the fact that that entire approach of women or people not feeling safe online is affecting the entire psyche of communities. So it's not just about the individual cases of a woman being stripped using AI. It is also about what goes on in her mind when she has a nice picture that she wants to post on social media.
Absolutely.
Because now you're thinking, what if I get stripped? What if the image is contorted in some way, in a way that harms me, not just online, but physically? So it's affecting the entire psyche of young women, of people all over the country. There is also the fear that even people who are not on social media usually have whenever they encounter very sensitive issues in their daily lives. I'd like to share two examples from the field. Once in Borno State, I interviewed an intersex person. He was displaced and had grown up as a girl because he thought, well, his female attributes were more prominent. At the time I spoke to him, he was about 17, and at some points in his life, he had been abducted by Boko Haram, he had been released, he had had some kind of encounter with medical personnel. So it was at a hospital that they told him that the male characteristics or the male hormones were somehow more than those of the female ones, and so He then had to overhaul his life. At this point, he was like 11, 12, and so they cut off his hair, and then he started living as a man, which is why now I'm referring to him as a he. He had to change his name and all of that. Imagine what that does to a child, not just a child, but a child living in a conflict-affected region. And one thing that kept coming up as I spoke to him that day was that he was constantly scared that photos of him when he was a girl would surface online, side-by-side photos of him as he was now. He doesn't even use the internet. He doesn't even use social media. He didn't even have a phone at that time. But because of what he had seen happen to other people, because of how society has collectively enabled a system where people can be dehumanized online, he already has that fear, and it was crippling. It was affecting his ability to go out, to show up in spaces where he wanted to, and to just live his life in a way that was loud and unapologetic. Sexual and reproductive health rights, unfortunately, also go hand in hand with issues of security for women and queer people. One case that comes to mind now is about this displaced woman. I speak about displaced people a lot because I work with them a lot. And her husband had been in detention for like 10 years, and then she became pregnant. And so because everybody knew that her husband was in detention, she was worried that it would be clear that she had engaged in extramarital sex. And so she attempted to terminate the pregnancy. Because she did not have access to the kind of resources that she needed, she ended up mixing a very diabolic paste. She mixed palm oil and detergent because somebody somewhere had told her that it would terminate her pregnancy. And in the aftermath of that, of course, she nearly died. It was a whole thing. But in the aftermath of that, because a lot of people had gathered and people were whipping out their phones to record what was going on, she was so scarred by the experience, so scared that those videos would find their way online, that she packed her things and left the IDP camp. I haven't seen her since that day. Nobody knows where she is. So it's important, of course, to talk about these individual cases of women being stripped online and just subjected to online harassment that always translates to physical harassment. But it's also important for us to look at the broader patterns around how it affects how we as women or vulnerable members of the community are able to live our lives.
Thank you so much, Hawa. Based off of what Hawa said, Bemi, what kind of strategies would you propose for situations like that where policies have failed us and even the social construct offline have failed us as well? What would you propose can be done? Strategies?
So I would just start by saying that a lot of the online violence that we see, they paddle on the back of biases that already exist. Yes, and the society we are in at the moment does not have enough, it has not created enough like an umbrella to keep people safe. So talking about strategies, I would look at it from two approaches. The first is preventive, and the other is responsive. For the preventive, in our work at TECA, we are seeing that a lot of time it is necessary for us as people, women and queer people, and people with disability, it is necessary for us to take extra care in the online space. It is sad, that you have to go the extra mile to do more than the regular person. But we've had situations where queer people cannot even take group calls on platforms like WhatsApp because it's unsafe, right? And they had to move to platforms like Signal. So, I mean, that is preventive. You need to know platforms that embed 2FA in them. Also, across your social media platforms, you need to make use of 2FA. You need to take cognizance of communicative, protective measures. And that's for the preventive side. And for the responsive, so when people become victims of this online violence, when, instances of NCIS, non-consensual intimate image sharing, where people they share your nudes without your consent. When that happens, most of the time, people panic and they want to delete the images. They want to delete the conversation, because usually NCIIS leads to extortion, because the person that has leaked your nudes wants something from you, probably wants money, it wants you to do something for them. And so instances like this, people panic, so it is important for you to save those photos. There's a platform where we at TECA make reports. It's Stop NCII, where you upload that photo to the platform and then they watermark it. Yeah. So if that person uploads that picture wherever, it automatically is pulled down, right? And there is also the need to rely on community, right? We know that society has failed us, so it is important to have response measures that are dependable. I would talk again about TECA. We have a platform called the Kuram, where people can make reports if they are victims of this violence. They make reports anonymously, and then whatever support we can give to them, our support is survival-centered. So sometimes the victim or the survivor just wants simple solution. Their idea of justice is not what we see as justice. Sometimes they just want the person to pull down the photo. They just want him to delete the photo, right? We've had instances where a Ijabi woman was posted without a scarf. That is injustice to her. And for her, it's for the picture to be pulled down. Yeah, so reporting to community-based response centers like Kuram, and also depending on your community. Yeah.
Thank you so much for that. I'll come back to, I'll close in on Chioma to just close out the whole thing. And just, your work is on a national level, and I would say that you have a lot of insight in what these processes are. What kind of gaps do you think make it difficult for the groups to seek protection or justice, and what reforms do you feel that should be done by the government and the large, bodies like yours and the government in general?
I would say we have legal gaps. When we look at the Cyber Crimes Act, we look at the Violence Against Persons Act, we even look at the Child Rights Act. They are not enough to adequately protect rights online, you know, so there are legal gaps. And then we have criminalization issue, like we have the Same-Sex Marriage Prohibition Act, which might not allow victims to come and actually lay a complaint to the police or even to the Human Rights Commission. I recall last year, I don't know who remembers the story of Area Mama. Before her death, she was assaulted, and we saw the case online, and somehow we got the number and reached out. Area Mama refused to come to the commission. It could have been because of fear of stigma or retaliation. Area Mama couldn't come to the commission to allow us step into the case. Also, I've been talking, most times you see that when the police arrest people, they parade them, notwithstanding that the law has stopped parading of suspects. So these are some of the gaps that you would see in the law. So when we talk about reforms, we cannot overemphasize on training and retraining of law enforcement agencies. We need to keep retraining, and that is why next year, early next year, through the Global Fund project that we're implementing, we are going to be conducting a nationwide training for law enforcement agencies, including HISHBA, who are
that's very good,
taking lead in northern states to arrest vulnerable persons. So, and also, we would maybe strengthen our referral pathways with law enforcement so that would ensure that the rights of vulnerable persons are protected. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Do you have any closing sentence or advice based on your work with the journalists in the media space? What can be done to really combat this online insecurity?
I think there's need for a lot more amplification by media organizations and independent journalists in Nigeria about the issues that women and queer people are facing all across the country. There is need for more nuanced and investigative reporting of these matters. There is no reason a Nigerian media organization should be publishing an article about how women are distracting men in the gym because of the clothes that they wear. And I'm not making this up. That article actually got published. I saw it, and there was an outcry, and then the organization pulled it down eventually, but it should never have happened in the first place. So we need to be a lot more nuanced about the stories we tell, we as media practitioners. We need to also ensure that a lot of the people we cover are being covered holistically. If we don't do that, what it means is that when conversations are being had about response mechanisms, about strategies on how to mitigate the issue, when research is being done about the problems, people are going to see a very one-sided face of the problem, which means that the solution would also be heavily one-sided. We also need to encourage a lot more interface between direct victims of violence and the policymakers or stakeholders or duty bearers who actually have the power to be able to fix these issues. I hear people ask me a lot, oh, you work with minoritized groups of people, what do you think they need? And I always find the question really funny, because just speak to them, just talk to them directly, ask them what they need, don't ask me. Yes, I might have an educated guess because I work with them, but ultimately when it comes to matters of human rights, matters of survival, you need to speak to the actual people who are affected to be able to know what exactly they need.
Thank you so much. Bemi, do you have any final words for us?
Yeah, so I used to say that civil society people talk a lot. Yes, we do talk a lot, but there are issues where we do not talk enough, and this is one of it. Conversations about this online violence regarding vulnerable groups, queer people, people with disability, women. We need to keep talking about it over and over and over and over again, because I think it was someone that said that if someone is hurting you and you don't complain, they will say that, oh, you're enjoying it when they were doing it to you. So we need to keep talking. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining me, Chioma, Hawa, and Gbemisola. It's been a very interesting discussion, and I'm happy that we're able to really delve into everything and also just not talk about what it is, but also try to provide solutions to everything, because doxing, online harassment, and everything else that goes on online always are based off of societal issues that we have physically, and the effects are also felt physically within the communities that we are in. So well, that ends our panel discussion, and thank you so much for being here, and thank you all.
As always, I hope we were taking notes, because that was a very insightful panel, and if we had an extra like 1 hour, I wouldn't have minded really going into, the context of technology-facilitated violence and continuing to explore how that translates offline, how that relates to the rise in insecurity. Beautiful work to our panelists and our moderator. Please, another round of applause for them. Thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So we have arrived at the end of this event, finally. Please help me welcome Chimdi Maike for the closing remarks. Please clap. Thank you.
Hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here. It's been a roller coaster today. We have gone through, we started at first, we heard what the EHED said, and how, the NHRC is going to be training law enforcement by next year. And that was really, really profound to me, because as an organization that, engages with law enforcement, there is a whole lot we have to do with them, because it seems that if you do this today, tomorrow you would go, it would be like you did not do anything. And there is no other organization that can do the work other than the National Human Rights Commission, because they hold that power. So we are happy that we are seeing progress, especially from the commission. And we went through what our keynote speaker said today, Arid, who took us to what we have to do. We talked about we'll have to die fighting for our dignity. It's very important that we make sure that as people and as Nigerians, that we hold on to the only thing that we have in this life, which is our dignity and the right to choose who we are, who we love, and who we want to be. And we had the two incisive panel discussions, and most importantly, we had the presentation of the 2025 Human Rights Violations Report. We saw all of the trends of violence. And it's interesting, we come here and we talk about figures and numbers, and we consolidate all of these cases into a report and numbers, but it's actual people. You know, you see Alex here laughing, you see me laughing. There are some times in the middle of the night you are not sleeping or you are crying, because it's actual people. People that have been killed, people that have been raped, people that have become destitute, that have been thrown out of their homes. And, you know, all of us that do this work, we show up every day, even with having existential crisis because of our country. But this is the road that we have cut out for us, and we have to show up every day as human rights defenders, as people, and as Nigerians. And before I round up, I want to just talk on one thing. Many of us might have heard it. Many of us that I don't know if you have heard about. They say anti-rights movement, right? When I say anti-rights, so that's based on certain rights. They do not believe that women should have bodily autonomy. They do not believe that vulnerable people to have access to resources, to lives, to opportunities, to being. And these movements, just like how we come as civil society and human rights defenders, these movements also coordinate. And my last word to everyone here is that if we say we truly are human rights defenders, if we say we truly are human rights organizations, we should hold on to the values of human rights. There's a whole lot of narrative that is going out there that says that, you know, something is un-African. They say that it is not our culture. But when you look at the people saying it's not our culture, you see Westerners or white people telling you what African culture is or what Nigerian cultures are. If we go back to look into our culture, we would find that diversity, the spirit of Ubuntu, community, has always existed. And I just want to leave us with a message today that as we go forward to keep doing the work we do, we should remember that there is another person at the other side of the table that also deserves dignity just as you. And that we should go forward with the fight, with the thought and the fight that one day, truly, we would get there if we all work collectively together. Thank you, everyone, for coming. At this point, I call this event to a close, and I say that we can now jolly, network, eat, and, you know, have fun. Thank you all.
Unlock your stay for less with Apple.